All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. It's now time for the newspaper review. Let's take a look at what the front pages of the national dailies are saying. Let's begin with Daily Trust newspaper, and we have the lead story here that talks about Boko Haram kills 35 fishermen in Borno, and writers here says terrorists tie them in net, spray them with bullets, says locals. We're sad, Dikwa Emir. Government in talks with security operatives, says Zulum, and you can find details of that story on page 4. But then there's also a pictorial of the Shehu of Dikwa, Haji Ibrahim ibn Umar Ibrahim El Kanemi, during a condolence visit to families of fishermen killed by Boko Haram in Borno State. Let's move on to more stories from the top of the page. Nigeria records 1.2 trillion naira surplus as foreign trade hits 52.38 trillion naira in 2022. We also have election postponement. Voters, parties express mixed reactions. We also have Shippers Council, FAN, others call low on ease of doing business compliance. Now, from the bottom of the page there, we have 6 killed, scores injured as train crushes BRT in Lagos. Buhari, Gbajabiamila, Sanwo-Olu mourn, and train passengers worried over rising accidents. We also have federal government begins probe. You can find details of that story on page 5. More stories. INEC kicks as court okays to use temporary voter card for voting. IWD, that's International Women's Day. Jaiz Bank to establish all-women wing. Details on page 21. And we have Kogi boy trying to arrest thieves on yam farm hacked to death. A really sad one there. And these are some of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper.
Moving on to the Nation newspaper this morning, it's leading with the headline, Tinubu's pledge to Nigerians, I will not disappoint you. My certificate of return is a World Cup trophy, President-elect says in Lagos. You'll find the President-elect there with various Obas, as they are known in Lagos, in a photo shoot alongside the governor of Lagos. Nigeria's debt hit 50 trillion. And to other stories, parties realign ahead of Saturday's polls. Obey Supreme Court judgment on Naira now, legal giants tell Buhari. And PDP leaders to picket INEC office over polls result. Rainstorms destroy 105 houses in Ekiti. And to other stories there, Masha becomes US-based G24 director. And farmers unite for APC governors. These are the major stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning.
All right, let's take a look at Blueprint newspaper. We have the lead story here that says controversies over February 25 polls. Buhari opens up, says there won't be another June 12. And we also have writers here that says assures Tinubu will be sworn in May 29. Protect integrity of data from beavers, APC tells INEC. And you can find details of that story on page 6. From top of the page there, we have Lagos train BRT crash. Death toll rises to 6. Sanwo-Olu suspends campaign. Declares 3 days mourning. Tinubu, Gbajabiamila, Jandor mourn. Driver of ill-fitted BRT in our custody, says police. On page 9, we have NSCDC arraigns man for defrauding sex worker in Ondo State. And 10th NAS, group favors North Central for president of Senate. We have more stories on the bottom of the page there. Women play crucial roles in Dangote Group's success story. Dangote's daughter. March 18. We haven't seen court judgment allowing use of TVC's INEC. And then we have Kanu to sack lawyer over poor representation. Orders IPOP to stop media attacks. And these are some of the stories on Blueprint newspaper.
Okay, moving on to the Nigerian Tribune, leading with the incidents from Lagos. 6 die, 70 injured in train. Lagos government staff bus coalition. Sanwo-Olu declares 3 days mourning, calls for blood donation. Driver undergoes psychiatric drug test, remanded in custody. We warned driver before he crossed the rail line, victims narrate ordeal. And FG calls for investigation. Buhari, Tinubu, Gbajabiamila, governors mourn. You'll find the details of this on page 4 and 5. Of course, you also have pictures there of the various scenes of the incidents yesterday in Lagos and the visit of the governor, as well as the hospital wards where most of the victims were hospitalized. 10 die in Oyo Ogbomoso Road accident. And court orders INEC to allow 2 voters to use temporary voters card in March 18 polls. Nadeco has no branch in the US. Okpadoku attacks Tinubu on ensuring federal constitutional governance. And 1 killed, 15 injured as APC PDP supporters clash in Bauchi. These are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
All right, let's take a look at Punch next. The lead story talks about the Lagos train bus crash, and then let's move on to more stories. At the top of the page there, INEC folds judgment permitting temporary voter cards for polls. We have NCAA probes Lufthansa over alleged passengers maltreatment. Visa revocation, court bars CEO from running Seplat. And beside the nameplate there, on roadblock, victims tackle lawless soldiers over extortion and harassment. And these are some of the stories on the Punch.
Moving on to The Guardian this morning. Polls shift may cost Nigeria more than $2.23 billion suffered in 2019. Postponement compounds Naira fuel scarcity woes. SBM intelligence presidency. Why Buhari is quiet over allegation of irregularities against INEC. March 18 polls, excuses no longer acceptable. IPAC cautions INEC. Bure, INEC has eroded our confidence. Protect integrity of data from beavers, APC tells INEC. And INEC kicks as court orders commission to allow 2 Nigerians vote without PVC. And of course, you also have the photos from yesterday's unfortunate incidents involving the train and the metro bus. On the front page there. 2 other stories. Black Thursday, 21 die in road crash in Lagos, Enugu. And pilot's training fee hits 20 million as NCAT, ICA increases tuition. And governorship election and lessons of the postponement. That's an editorial, and you'll find that on page 12. And there's a strip down there below the pictures. 1 week after Supreme Court ruling, CBN silence stokes confusion. That you'll find on page 6. These are the major stories on the front page of The Guardian.
All right, let's take a look at Business Day newspaper. INEC's flop spurs tech industry into action. We also have cash crunch, fuel scarcity bites harder in Abuja. Currency risk dulls investor interest in Nigeria's energy transition plan. Pricey kidney care leaves poor Nigerians in a fix. And we also have Nigerians' oil output hits 13-month high of 1.3 million barrels per day. And these are some of the stories on Business Day.
And to our last paper here on display would be First News newspaper. It stays with Tinubu's victory. Tinubu's victory, sacrosanct. Presidency tells PDP, LP, others. Again, advises aggrieved opposition parties to go to court. Rules out annulment of election results. Says Buhari refused to react to INEC criticism by wishful thinkers. And 2 other stories. Tinubu sympathizes with Ikeja train crash victims. Dogara endorses PDP's Sadiq Abubakar for Bauchi's Guba poll. And how troop foiled terrorist thugs attempt to disrupt polls and defense headquarters. And court remands ex-Imo deputy governor in prison. 2 other stories. Governorship polls. Court ordered INEC to allow use of temporary voters card. Appeal court reserves judgment in PDP's case against Tinubu, Shetima, APC. and federal government orders the investigation bureau to probe train crash. These are some of the major stories on the front page of First News newspaper.
All right, well, with that, we're done reading out the stories on the front page of the dailies, national dailies, and we have our guest in the studio, Nuruddin Abdullah. He's the editor, 21st Century Chronicles, and he's actually here with us to analyze some of these stories. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, thank you.
For always joining us. We appreciate your time. All right, so, let's begin on a sad note, talking about the lead story on Daily Trust newspaper that talks about Boko Haram killing 35 fishermen in Borno State. And locals actually said they tied them in their own fishing nets and then, sprayed them with bullets. Really sad one.
It's really tragic. Tragic in the sense that, excuse me, it has been long since we had such sad stories, particularly with the apparent degradation of the terrorists. But stories like these, means a lot need to be done, particularly on the incidents. If you put this side by side with what happened in Niger Republic not long ago, some of their soldiers were captured and brutally murdered, and the terrorists even shared footages. So it means that there are still some elements of Boko Haram Israel along the Lake Chad basin, and the security agencies need to really galvanize troops and maybe finish this job once and for all, because 35 is a very big number. It belongs since we have something like this again. I can understand the troops, the DSQ is deploying troops to the other side of the country, particularly the northwest and part of the north central, because of the banditry. And if you take this and see what happened in Kaduna yesterday, in Niger the day before yesterday, it means that something really needs to be done, and very quickly, because you see what happened in Niger, about 50 abducted. This is one of the largest number in the last couple of months. In Kaduna, a community was attacked, remember. So there are some pockets of the bandits are regrouping and launching attacks, and the Boko Haram as well. We thought that their capabilities were totally degraded, but now, they have this capability to launch this attack on soft target, like these people are IDPs, for heaven's sake. IDPs, fishing. They have already been traumatized, sent out of their villages and towns for years, and now still. So it's a very serious matter, and I hope the appropriate authorities will take appropriate action so that this thing will not be a recurring decimal again.
People would say that, which is a positive comment, by the way, that the Borno State government had done well to had returned these people to their abode. But with attacks like this, one begin to question whether it was the right time, to have taken them back, given that, like you said, there are still leftovers of these people, especially around the Lake Chad basin. That's on the one hand. On the second, you talked about wiping this off. Some part of the Lake Chad extends beyond the Nigerian shore. Isn't it enough, time that we also see an how would I call it, a regional arrangement, sort of with the Lake Chad and even the Niger Republic, because the last time we had a major onslaught around the place was with the late Chadian president leading the troop in an affront against these people. What do we need to do to properly, because if you must relocate them, these people for centuries have always had their major livelihood around fishing. Somehow they will still have to get back to the same place if they must survive. What can we do really in this regard?
I think relocating them is not just enough. You remember some years back, particularly when the Chadians came, they were clearing Boko Haram, but they can't hold fort on those territories. And unfortunately, by the time they move, Boko Haram will return, because the police, actually when a territory is cleared of the terrorists, there should be semblance of authorities around that area. But in our own case, there is almost zero presence of such people. So if you return Boko Haram and IDPs to Mafa, for instance, Kala Balgi or what have you, and Gamborongala, and there are no security agencies there, you are still exposing them, because these terrorists can still come back and inflict mortal damage, like they did here, and flee. That is one. So I think maybe apart from rebuilding their burned, deserted villages and towns, maybe the Borno State government has to equally look at the idea of security. I know before they relocate them back, they have to get security guarantees from the appropriate authorities. That's for sure. So I think maybe they have to up the ante in that regard. And on the second leg of your question, here we do have. There is a multinational joint task force headquartered in Jamina, in Chad, you understand, where Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad, we come troops. Most of the commanders are even from Nigeria. So I think maybe there is need to, maybe our security forces have slacked down, thinking that maybe with the infighting between ISWAP factions and Boko Haram, like we had last week, the security agencies are telling us that hundreds of Boko Harams were slaughtered by their hitherto comrades, the ISWAP terrorists. So I think it's a good opportunity to utilize the infighting among the terrorists and finish them up. Else, things like this will continue to happen, even though we don't pray for it.
All right, now still talking about, deaths, the 6 that were killed and scores injured, even as the train crushes BRT in Lagos. It seems like a reoccurrence, with what actually happened in Abuja. But in this case, this particular driver had so many people in his car, and, even after he knew that the train was closed, he still thought he could beat, the train. And look at how it ended.
I think 2 issues are fundamental to the story here. One, you have to know the mental health of the people you employ as drivers. That is one. It's very fundamental.
Very important.
Because from the stories, it said that the driver was being stopped, but he thought, so, he preferred speed rather than safety. You understand? The place was barricaded, but he still think it's a moving train. If he's alone, it's understandable. Maybe you want to commit suicide or whatever. But with people inside, not a salon, but a BRT bus. You understand? And look at what even some of the survivors were saying. They were telling him to stop. So fundamentally, all state governments, even the federal government, they have to be subjecting their drivers to mental health checks periodically. Are they into drugs? Because as a driver, the only thing is about safety. But when you throw away safety measures and accept in speed and whatever, if you want to go there early, go starting time. You understand?
You have been in Lagos. It's like a second or a third home for you for a lot of things. We've seen how reckless these public transport drivers can be. And you said something that was instructive. We remember when they were introducing these buses, the government were busy promising the reckless drivers that we want to stop you so that we can give you better cars. If it is just about moving people from the smaller, reckless vehicles they were using into bigger ones and entrusting more lives into their care, then something is fundamentally wrong with that recruitment process. Bus driving across other parts of the world are noble jobs. They are not for every term they can hurry. What can we do to clean that space? Because this is becoming a recurring decimal.
I think we neglect it. We hire, even at our family levels, we don't do background check because we pay them pittance. Not even talk of mental health. You employ a driver that will come and be teaching your teenage kids how to smoke. You don't even know because he's always with them. So attention, particularly the Lagos state government, attention must be paid into that sector. You remember the case, there are some BRT drivers that are now being prosecuted for assault and sexually assaulting, allegedly assaulting their passengers.
Yes.
So it means that a lot is wrong with the recruitment process. The right people are not being recruited. You understand? It's a public service. So enough care should be taken. But unfortunately, like you said now, the agberos, to use that word, that have been doing the motorway, are now giving BRT. So you are transferring the problem and subjecting the lives of people into serious danger. Look at what happened yesterday. He must have been under the influence of something.
Possibly.
You understand? They were telling him, stop. No, he did not. So I think maybe state governments, particularly Lagos, should take into consideration the types of drivers they have, particularly for this BRT, and even the licensing process. The licensing process has been abused seriously across the country. Is it the road safety that's given the driver's license or the VIO? That confusion is still there. So I think maybe if we get that act correct and right, maybe we can minimally, drastically reduce some of these ugly incidents.
And without, just before Senate takes this story, the same thing has to happen to the truck drivers.
Yeah.
We are beginning to see, they don't pay attention to traffic stops. They don't even see other road users as road users, especially if it's a smaller vehicle versus they practically will want to squeeze you against the barricades. And when you succeed in going past them and look through your window to see the kind of people driving, you see kids of somewhere between 18 and 25 handed those kind of responsibility, carrying highly flammable contents, driving recklessly on our road. And sometimes you even get the impression that these people are bigger than the law, because once the traffic wardens attempt to even stop them, they use the same vehicle to barricade the road and cause serious commotion on the road. Sometimes it feels like our government has completely given up on those set of people.
Yes, because I think it's a two-way problem. They have leadership. The appropriate authorities should engage with the leadership of these drivers. They can be trailers, they can be tanker drivers, and even tipper drivers inside the metropolis. They can badge your car. If you are lucky, you catch him. If not, that's the end. You understand? So I think enough needs to be done. They have leadership. If they are too reckless, for instance, I don't see any why a state government cannot ban them. Maybe from the cities for some hours and what if you. But unfortunately, like other sectors, the laws are not being respected. That's why there are loopholes. With small amount of money they can get, they can go off the hook. So it's actually a series of issues that we have to look into and begin to amend them gradually, so that we can reduce the madness on the highways.
All right, well, just before we move on to other stories, since we're still talking about, crime and all that, let's take a look at the City and Crime page on Daily Trust newspaper. We have some very interesting stories here. We have woman sues hubby for denying her conjugal rights, says marriage not only about food. We also have a pictorial of some PVCs, ballot papers and other items recovered by soldiers from a private apartment at Olodi area of Lagos. Now, politicians collected our account numbers without paying. Niger voters cry out. We have a man approaches court, says the wife abandoned him for 12 years. Soldiers raid kidnappers, then rescue commissioner in Cross Rivers. So many stories here. We have court grants nursing mother and brother bail over stolen phone. We also have FCTA distributes gadgets to security agencies. I never intended killing my girlfriend, Chinese tells court. This is the kind of story. And I will just take one more. Kogi boy trying to arrest thieves on yam farm hacked to death. And these are some of the stories on City and Crime page. If you want to have, have details of more of these stories, you can actually grab a copy of Daily Trust newspaper. So, Mr. Nuruddin.
So the last story you mentioned, they're very tragic,
Exactly.
The boy wants to protect their hard work. So maybe months of hard work, and the accident gruesomely murdered him. So unfortunate. And I hope they will be arrested and subjected to the full wrath of the law. There are so many court cases. This one is talking about the woman is saying marriage is not all about food.
And she's true. She's
right. Marriage is not all about food. The other one is complaining that the woman has abandoned him for 12 years. It simply means that she's no longer interested in the marriage. Not by force.
Man shall not live by bread alone. Yeah.
And the Niger story is it looks more interesting.
Yeah, they collected the account numbers.
The bribe was
it was incomplete transaction. That's the banks would say. That's the banks would say. I think the delay in the completion is now raising tension.
Yes, it's so unfortunate. So, despite the cash crunch, some unscrupulous politicians are using the other way to cheat, and
maybe they will tell them it's the bank, it's not me. The money has moved from my account, but it's again.
But one of my friends said that majority of people that can be hoodwinked into this are the women. Is it true?
I seriously
because all this spaghetti,
but they cook it for the men who don't ask where it is coming from before they eat it.
Exactly.
So when you give one, the others will go back. They are sharing this 2 pack of spaghetti. And not even a full wrapper. Wrapper has 6 pieces, right? In some places, in Kaduna and Kano, they share it into 2, some 3. In Hausa, we call it palebu. And it's most unfortunate. I think maybe it's a factor of illiteracy and poverty.
Unfortunately.
That people will just shortchange. They will deliberately allow themselves to be shortchanged. 2 spaghetti. You can't, if you are a family of 4, for instance, that's a meal for just 2.
Just a lunch.
Just a lunch.
Without fish and maggi.
You understand? And that wrapper is 1/4. They are sharing the most substandard, that maybe if you wash it, if you dip it inside water, you won't even recognize it. And not even the full
length.
So it's most unfortunate. I hope that the Electoral Act election violators or people will take its course, particularly this time around. Their cash crunch, because you can't give money, now you are able anticipatory bribe or giving spaghetti or noodles or. It's most unfortunate.
I think what's important to note behind the drama and everything is the fact that vote buying is a crime. If you are arrested, you can be jailed for it. It would not matter whether it's a pack of spaghetti or it's a standard material that was given to you. Those who didn't get it are still alive.
And more importantly, the giver and the taker I think I should be culpable.
Because
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Absolutely.
If you are giving me a part of spaghetti,
maybe that was why the transaction was truncated, so that the evidence will not be available to indict them. But it is what it is. We want to thank you, Nuruddin Abdallah, for making it to the studio today. We hope we were able to brighten your day in the face of the postponement. Everybody wanted this election to come and go so that we can get our lives back. But the nation is ours. We continue to endure until next Saturday, hopefully. Thank you very much for making it to the studio.
Pleasure.